And hello everyone, I am your host Mattias Vella and welcome to another viewing of our show Iffisati. Today our topic is about historical fencing. But before we get to the interview, allow me to please introduce to you a feature done by my esteemed colleague Dean Camilleri as he visits the Malta Historical Fencing Association's training hall in St. Publius Hall, Floriana. And he interviews one of the senior members, Carla Juice. Please enjoy.
Thanks, Matt. So I've just entered the St. Publius Hall in Floriana, where I will conduct the interview with Mr. Carl Ajus to see what he's picked up over the years. Thank you very much for meeting me today to do this interview. So, for our first question, classes consist of practice drills and free assaults. Could you elaborate on what that means?
Okay, so practice drill is basically a repetitive movement that you do over and over again to learn a technique, some concept. Basically, it's an exercise that you do over and over again until you get used to what you're practicing. It basically gives you the foundation of the techniques you're going to use later on. Free assault is basically a fight, so it's not choreographed, it's not scripted, and basically what you have there are two fencers who are trying to hit each other using whichever techniques they're practicing. So again, it's basically using what they learned in the drills into an actual situation.
So is the sport itself dangerous?
Well, not really. I mean, if you're careless, it could be. But as you can see, we wear protective clothing. We also have gloves, which I'm not wearing right now, and a mask, obviously. Some accidents can happen sometimes, like I've just broken a fingernail, for example, but that's like once in 8 years. So compared to football or cycling, I think it's actually pretty safe.
So where do you get the weapons and clothing for the sport from?
Well, most of the equipment is sourced from normal suppliers. It used to be a bit harder to find equipment, but in the last 10 years it's really picked up, so there are plenty more shops selling equipment, more equipment manufacturers, so that helps a lot. Again, weapons are also manufactured by a variety of suppliers. Most we get ours from one particular smith, which who we know personally, so yeah, we even get a little customization in when we can, so that's nice. Shipping the equipment in really isn't that much of a hassle. Remember that even if it's a sword-shaped object, there's no edge on it and there's no point, so it's not actually a sharp weapon, which would be a problem to import, of course.
And could you please tell us more about the combat style you use?
Of course. No, the thing is that styles vary depending on the weapon used, the period one is studying. So, for example, 14th century longsword would be quite different from 16th century longsword, and a small sword is obviously very different from a spear. So that goes with the weapon. However, there are some principles that are common. It doesn't matter what you're using. It doesn't matter if you have a spear or whether you're barehanded. As basically like managing the distance between oneself and the opponent, remaining covered so that one doesn't expose oneself too much, and none of the Hollywood style waving around, because that just exposes your targets and you're going to get killed very quickly. So whatever you're using is basically defending yourself, finding the right angle of approach, managing the distance, and when you find the timing and an opening, then you go in without uncovering yourself. It's more about not getting hit. It's not about hitting your opponent. It's about walking away from it when you're done.
Alright, well that's it for now. Back to you, Matthias. I have my own battles to fight.
And may he rest in peace. So, with us today, we have our special guest, Andrei Shrirep. How are you doing? Thank you very much for coming.
I'm fine, thank you, and thanks for inviting me.
My absolute pleasure. So, let's start off with a very basic but very broad question. What exactly is HEMA, as in Historical European Martial Arts?
Okay, HEMA is a modern acronym used, in fact, to describe martial arts that happened in Europe in the past. So HEMA covers about 600 years of martial arts, and when we say martial arts, it's mostly with weapons, but there are also systems which are also unarmed, like some kind of wrestling and grappling, basically, things that happen when you lose the weapon as well.
Interesting. And what about it is so appealing to your students and yourself? Is it the weapons, the historical aspect, or the cultural aspect? What?
I think people join a historical martial arts group for different reasons. We have people coming from different backgrounds. Some might come from the attraction, the lure of the swords, maybe from movies, on video games, maybe. Some actually like the historical aspect, but many like to try something that has a martial art that has a European background. Then you get the chance as well to fight physically. So,
and I can imagine it's very fun just letting out all your not your frustration, but for example, letting out a bit of physical exercise in such a different kind of sport.
Absolutely, and historical fencing can touch on all these aspects. There is the physical aspect, of course. There is the mental aspect, because you have to concentrate and try your strategy. And we have as well the historical part, which is the cultural part of it.
And fencing, does it specifically have to be in a one-on-one format, or can you specifically train to fight multiple opponents at once?
Yes, of course, we don't train for battles, because otherwise we would need 1,000 people against 1,000 people. So historical fencing, or the word fencing per se, meant the art of defense. So it is what a soldier or a knight had to learn in order to survive. So we do practice a one-on-one mostly, but there are some exercises sometimes where you could practice against two people coming to attack you in a case of an ambush, for example, historically. It's a very good practice to start to deal with a bigger problem.
And your historical fencing, as in, do you specifically teach it to pass on your information to other students so that they become instructors, or is that not your goal?
Well, let's say, okay, the purpose is not that. Of course, the purpose is practice, learn, have fun doing what you've learned. But eventually, we would hopefully have as well instructors that after years of practice, they could do exams to become an instructor, maybe, if that's what they want.
And do you keep in contact with other foreign instructors? Do you hold other meetings or events with them?
Absolutely. I've learned. I've got my qualifications from Italy under an association that teaches these things. So absolutely, I still have regular contacts with them. Plus, as well, other groups around the world. Luckily, nowadays with the internet, we keep in touch. Plus, we as well attend each other's classes sometimes.
And as I know, you are the only qualified historical fencing instructor in Malta, a Master of Arms. What does it take to reach such a rank?
Well, it takes, in my case, as I mentioned, I had to travel to go to learn, because in Malta this historical fencing didn't exist, let alone a qualified teacher in it. So I chose the painful route of going up and down almost for 5 years, up and down to Italy every month to get my qualifications. And the plan, of course, is to bring this knowledge in Malta, so we have a base of a structure, so we can continue now on our research as well.
And how large is the association now?
At the moment, considering as well the size of the island, we have approximately just over 30 members, slowly increasing. We have a mix of males and females from 16 upwards.
And I know that, for example, you attract quite a few of your members through these events that you host every now and again in Malta. How often do you do them, and how do they work?
Well, throughout the year, we host or we are invited to give public demonstrations, which usually involve us taking turns into showing fighting techniques with the different weapons that we practice. We do practice weapons from the 1400s up to the 1900s, so we do quite have a good variety. As well, we've hosted lectures in historical circles as well. Recently, for example, this year we did a medieval lecture about the medieval life towards Fort St. Angelo. So they were attended by a lot of people. As well, we have a chance of demonstrating and having weapon handling by the public. Those pretty much are our normal type of events that we do.
That is extremely interesting. I myself attended many of your events, and they were extremely entertaining, and really shows the effort that you and your students put into your sport. And I say, because I call it a lifestyle.
It is a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle.
Now, thank you very much for attending. I wish we had more time, but that's all the time we had for today. Now, before we send ourselves off, I would like to urge everyone to visit www.historicalfencingmalta.org if you are interested in this sport, and also visit the association's Facebook page. I would also like to thank our fabulous director, Michelle Portelli, and our makeup artist, Marlene Vassallo. Please, all of you, have a nice day.